The New York Stock Exchange fell silent as Emma Carter, visibly pregnant and radiating quiet power, strode confidently toward the podium where Alexander Reynolds was about to ring the opening bell for NevaWave's historic IPO. Flanked by SEC agents and her attorney, Emma locked eyes with the billionaire who had discarded her like trash just weeks earlier. "Alexander," she greeted him coldly, "I believe these gentlemen have something to discuss with you before trading begins." The color drained from Alexander's face as the SEC agent handed him a cease and desist order. Victoria Pierce, his mistress, froze mid-champagne toast. The cameras that were meant to capture Alexander's triumph now broadcast his downfall to the world. "You gave me nothing," Emma declared, her voice cutting through the stunned silence. "You took everything: my work, my reputation, my future. But you made one critical mistake. Alexander, you underestimated me." Like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to watch the full story of how a pregnant secretary took down a tech billionaire and claimed his empire as her own. Don't forget to comment your thoughts below. The morning sun glinted off the sleek glass facade of Horizon Tower, casting long shadows across Manhattan's skyline. 72 stories of architectural brilliance house the headquarters of NevaWave Technologies, the fastest-growing tech company on the East Coast. On the uppermost floor, Emma Carter's heels clicked rhythmically against the Italian marble as she made her way to the CEO's office, carrying a stack of documents for the board meeting. At 28, Emma had already accomplished what many would consider a lifetime achievement, serving as executive assistant to Alexander Reynolds, the $40 billion man whose name inspired awe and fear in equal measure throughout Silicon Valley and Wall Street. 5 years by his side had taught her everything about the tech industry and about Alexander himself. "Good morning, Mr. Reynolds," Emma said, setting down his preferred breakfast black coffee, 2 shots of espresso, and a protein bar. No sugar, no carbs, no weakness. Alexander barely looked up from his 3 monitors, his fingers flying across the keyboard. At 38, he possessed the intense focus of a predator and the calculated precision of a chess grandmaster. His dark hair was perfectly styled, his custom Tom Ford suit impeccably tailored to his athletic frame. "The board presentation needs revisions. Their attention spans are shorter than a TikTok video," he said, finally acknowledging her presence. "And move my lunch with Senator Pierce to tomorrow. His daughter is coming in for the marketing review at 11. Victoria Pierce. The name alone made Emma's stomach twist uncomfortably. "I've already made the changes to the presentation," Emma replied, sliding a tablet toward him. "And I've rescheduled the senator, though Victoria has requested to move the marketing review to the private conference room instead of the main boardroom." Alexander's expression changed subtly, a slight upward curve of his lips that most wouldn't notice. But Emma noticed everything about Alexander Reynolds. It was her job. It had been her passion, and for the past 6 months, it had been her downfall. "That works," he said dismissively. "Close the door on your way out." Emma nodded and turned to leave, unconsciously placing her hand over her still flat stomach. 3 months pregnant. 3 months of morning sickness disguised as food poisoning. 3 months of wondering how to tell the father of her child, a man who viewed emotions as inefficiencies and relationships as strategic alliances. She closed the door behind her and leaned against it momentarily, taking a deep breath. The nausea had subsided, but the anxiety remained. Today was the day she would tell him, after the board meeting, after securing her future and that of her child. Emma returned to her desk, adjacent to Alexander's office. Her workspace was minimalist but elegant, a reflection of her organized mind and attention to detail. Harvard diploma displayed discreetly on the wall. The latest MacBook Pro open to multiple spreadsheets and schedules. A small potted succulent, the only personal touch she allowed herself in this sterile glass kingdom. She opened Alexander's calendar to prepare for the board meeting and noticed he had forgotten to log out of his email on the shared presentation computer. Emma would normally never invade his privacy, but a notification popped up, a message from Victoria Pierce with the subject line, "Last night." Her finger hovered over the mouse, This was crossing a line. This was the message preview loaded automatically. Alex, I can't stop thinking about last night. Your place again after the marketing review. I've prepared something special to celebrate our 3-month anniversary. VP, Emma's world collapsed inward. 3 months. The exact time her relationship with Alexander had suddenly cooled. The exact time she had conceived their child. The exact time Victoria Pierce had joined Nevawave as marketing director. With trembling hands, Emma clicked the message, scrolling through an exchange that confirmed her worst fears. Alexander and Victoria had been seeing each other for 3 months, the affair beginning the very weekend after Emma had first shared Alexander's bed. More messages loaded, photos, plans. A weekend getaway to his Hamptons estate, the same estate where Alexander had first told Emma he couldn't offer her anything beyond discreet encounters, citing the company's policy against workplace relationships, a policy that apparently didn't apply to the daughter of a powerful senator. Emma closed the email and wiped a tear from her cheek. She wouldn't break down. Not here, not now. 5 years of Harvard education, graduating summa cum laude, 5 years of working 18-hour days, contributing ideas that had transformed Nevawave from a promising startup into a tech giant on the verge of the biggest IPO in recent history. 5 years of being more than just an assistant, being the woman behind the throne. The board meeting passed in a blur. Emma performed flawlessly, as always, taking notes, anticipating Alexander's needs, presenting the sections he had delegated to her sections that showcased her intimate knowledge of the company's operations and financials. When the meeting concluded, board members filed out with handshakes and congratulations for Alexander. The IPO was on track. The company valuation had exceeded expectations. Everything was perfect. Everything was falling apart. Emma, prepare the conference room for the marketing review, Alexander instructed, checking his watch, a $300,000 Patek Philippe she had helped select for his last birthday. Actually, Mr. Reynolds, could I speak with you privately first? It will only take a moment. Alexander frowned. He despised deviation from schedule, but nodded curtly and gestured toward his office. Once inside, he moved behind his desk, a massive slab of black granite that created a barrier between them. I have 5 minutes before Victoria arrives. What is it? Emma straightened her shoulders and met his gaze directly. I'm pregnant. The words hung in the air between them. Alexander's expression remained unchanged, but his knuckles whitened as he gripped the edge of his desk. I assume you're certain and that it's... He left the question unfinished. Yes to both. I'm 3 months along, and you're the only one I've been with. Alexander's jaw tightened. He stood abruptly and walked to the floor-to-ceiling windows, overlooking the city he was gradually conquering. This is unfortunate timing. Emma, the IPO is weeks away. The company can't afford any complications or distractions. I understand that, Emma said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. I'm not asking for anything that would compromise the company. I just thought you should know. What exactly are you asking for? Alexander interrupted, turning to face her with cold calculation in his eyes. Before Emma could answer, the office door opened without a knock. Victoria Pierce swept in, a vision in a red designer dress that accentuated her curves and confidence. At 30, she had the polished perfection of old money combined with ruthless ambition. Alex, darling, Victoria stopped, registering Emma's presence with a flash of irritation. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't realize you were in a meeting with your assistant. The way she said assistant made the prestigious position sound like a personal insult. We were just finishing, Alexander said, his demeanor shifting instantly. Emma was just informing me of a personal situation that might affect her work schedule. Victoria's perfectly sculpted eyebrows rose. Nothing serious. I hope we can't afford any disruptions before the IPO. Emma watched the interaction with growing horror. The casual darling, Alexander's changed body language. Victoria's territorial stance. This wasn't just an affair. This was a carefully calculated partnership. Actually, Emma began, finding her voice. I was explaining to Mr. Reynolds that I'm expecting a child. Victoria's expression transformed from mild annoyance to sharp interest. How wonderful for you, she said without warmth. When will you be taking your maternity leave after the IPO? I hope the child is mine, Alexander stated flatly, surprising both women with his directness. Or so she claims. Emma felt as though she'd been slapped. Alexander, you know, what I know, he cut her off, is that this company is on the verge of making history. What I know is that rumors of impropriety between a CEO and his assistant could tank our stock before it even launches. What I know, Emma, is that you've put me in an impossible position. Victoria recovered quickly, her crimson lips curving into a smile that never reached her eyes. Oh, Alex, surely there's a solution that works for everyone. Emma is a smart woman. I'm sure she understands what's at stake here. Emma felt the room spinning around her. This couldn't be happening. The man she had devoted 5 years to, the man whose company she had helped build, whose success she had contributed to, whose child she now carried, was looking at her as if she were nothing more than a problem to be solved. I think, Victoria continued smoothly, this might constitute a conflict of interest. Company policy is quite clear about workplace relationships, isn't it? Perhaps Emma would be more comfortable taking a generous separation package for the good of the company? Of course. Alexander didn't immediately reject the suggestion. That silence told Emma everything. You're firing me? Emma asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I'm offering you an opportunity to exit gracefully. Alexander replied, returning to his desk and pressing the intercom. Security, please come to my office. Security, Emma echoed, disbelieving. Alexander, we need to discuss this rationally. The company bylaws clearly state, that I, as CEO and majority shareholder, can terminate employment at will when there's reasonable cause. Dating your boss and then conveniently becoming pregnant weeks before an IPO that would make you a millionaire through your stock options certainly qualifies. Emma's blood turned to ice. You pursued me. Alexander, you invited me to your home under the pretense of working late. You told me I'd be careful about making accusations. Emma, Alexander warned, his voice dropping dangerously low, especially ones that can't be proven. It would be unfortunate if you were blacklisted throughout the industry for attempting to extort a company on the verge of its IPO. 2 security guards entered the office, their expressions professionally blank. Ms. Carter will be leaving us today, Alexander informed them. Please escort her to her desk to collect her personal belongings, then out of the building. Her access has been terminated effective immediately. Emma stood frozen, unable to process the betrayal unfolding before her. My equity in the company. Your options haven't vested, Alexander cut in coldly. As per your employment contract, unvested options are forfeited upon termination. Victoria moved to Alexander's side, placing a proprietary hand on his arm. It's for the best. Emma, think of it as an opportunity for a fresh start, somewhere more family-friendly. The security guard stepped forward, waiting for Emma to move. She looked at Alexander one last time, searching for any sign of the man who had whispered promises in the darkness of his penthouse, who had once told her she was the only person who truly understood him. She found nothing but cold ambition. You'll regret this, Emma said quietly. Alexander's laugh was short and dismissive. I never regret business decisions. Emma, you should know that by now. The security guards led Emma through the open office area, past the shocked stares of colleagues who had never seen the impeccable Emma Carter anything less than perfectly composed. She held her head high, refusing to give Alexander or Victoria the satisfaction of seeing her break. At her desk, she collected her few personal items: the succulent, her Harvard diploma, a spare pair of shoes. One of the guards watched as she emptied her drawers, while the other disabled her company phone. Your personal effects from your office email will be forwarded to your private account, the guard informed her mechanically. Any company property must remain here. Emma nodded numbly, placing her items in her designer tote bag, a Christmas gift from Alexander. As she did, her fingers brushed against something small and hard in the inner pocket. The USB drive she had used that morning to back up the board presentation, the one containing all the IPO preparation documents, financial projections, and proprietary algorithms. She left it where it was. The descent in the elevator was the longest 90 seconds of Emma's life. When the doors opened to the lobby, sheets of rain were visible through the glass entrance. Emma stepped outside into the downpour without an umbrella, the cold water mixing with the tears she finally allowed to fall. Standing on the sidewalk, she looked up at the imposing Horizon Tower, at the top floor where Alexander Reynolds was probably already continuing his meeting with Victoria, as if Emma Carter had never existed. Her hand moved to her stomach protectively. "We'll be okay," she whispered to her unborn child. "And they'll pay for this. I promise you that." As if in response to her vow, her phone chimed with a text message from Alexander. "Forget about us. If you're smart, you'll leave the city. Your final check will be processed today, and your accounts will be locked for audit purposes. Don't make this messier than it needs to be." Emma pocketed her phone and hailed a taxi, giving the driver the address of her Brooklyn apartment. As the taxi pulled away from Horizon Tower, she made a silent promise to herself and her child. This wasn't the end of Emma Carter's story. It was just the beginning of Alexander Reynolds' nightmare. Emma's Brooklyn apartment felt impossibly small after the expansive views of Horizon Tower. Once a point of pride, a place she had secured on her own merit in a decent neighborhood, it now felt like a cage closing in around her. She stood in the shower until the hot water ran out, as if she could wash away the humiliation of being escorted from the building like a criminal. When she finally emerged, she checked her bank accounts on her personal phone and found them frozen, just as Alexander had threatened. 5 years of savings, inaccessible. "Audit purposes," she muttered bitterly, wrapping herself in a towel. "More like punishment purposes." Emma, dressed in sweatpants and an oversized Harvard t-shirt, clothing Alexander had never seen her in. She had always maintained a professional image around him, even during their brief intimate encounters. Always perfectly put together, always controlled. Now, with wet hair and bare feet, she opened her laptop and began to assess her situation. First, she tried logging into her work email. Access denied. Next, her benefits portal. Access denied. The company intranet. Denied. Her stock option account. Denied. Alexander had been thorough. Within hours, Emma Carter had been erased from Nevawave Technologies as if she had never existed. She placed her hand on her stomach, the reality of her situation sinking in. Single, pregnant, unemployed, and potentially blacklisted if Alexander made good on his threat. "Think, Emma," she told herself. "You didn't graduate summa cum laude from Harvard by panicking." She opened a spreadsheet and began calculating. Her frozen accounts contained most of her savings, approximately $87,000. Her emergency cash, hidden in a hollowed-out economics textbook, amounted to $3,000. Her apartment rent was due in 10 days to $200. Utilities, food, prenatal vitamins, doctor's appointments. Without access to her accounts or a job, she had approximately 6 weeks before financial catastrophe. Emma closed the spreadsheet and opened a new document. She began typing furiously. 1. Apply for new positions immediately. 2. Contact bank to dispute account freeze. 3. Research legal options regarding wrongful termination. 4. Schedule prenatal appointment. 5. Assess the contents of the USB drive. She stared at the last item, the flash drive now sitting on her desk like a live grenade. She hadn't intended to take company property. It had been an accident, a forgotten backup from the morning's board meeting. But now, Emma plugged the drive into her laptop. It contained more than just the board presentation. Alexander, overconfident as always, had granted her access to nearly everything: financial projections, proprietary algorithms, emails, contracts, the complete IPO filing, and something else. A folder labeled Project Phoenix containing acquisition strategies for smaller tech companies, including a startup called Innovate Tech, where Emma's brother Jason had worked until its mysterious collapse the previous year. The folder contained emails between Alexander and Victoria's father, Senator Pierce, discussing regulatory arrangements that would clear the path for Nevawave to absorb these companies at fire sale prices. "My God," Emma whispered, scrolling through documents revealing how Alexander had deliberately sabotaged Innovate Tech by planting stories about security vulnerabilities in their products, vulnerabilities that didn't exist. A knock at the door startled her. Emma quickly ejected the USB drive and tucked it into her pocket before answering. A delivery man handed her an envelope. "Legal document," he said brusquely. "Need your signature." Emma signed for the package with growing dread. Inside was a cease and desist letter from Nevawave's attorneys, warning her against disparaging the company or its executives, citing the non-disclosure agreement she had signed upon hiring. The letter also demanded the return of any company property in her possession, specifically mentioning electronic storage devices. They knew about the USB drive. Emma's phone rang an unknown number. She answered cautiously. "Emma Carter," a male voice asked. "Yes, who's calling?" "Michael Thompson. We met briefly at the Venture Capital Summit last month. I was hoping we could meet for coffee. I have a proposition that might interest you." Emma hesitated. Michael Thompson was a legendary venture capitalist who had been present at several Nevawave investor meetings. Why would he want to meet with her now? "I'm afraid I'm no longer with Nevawave. Mr. Thompson, if you're looking for information about the company—" "I'm well aware of your situation," Michael interrupted. "That's precisely why I want to meet. The Greenwich Village Coffee House on Christopher Street. 1 hour. Come alone and don't tell anyone about our meeting." The line went dead before Emma could respond. Suspicion warred with desperation. This could be a trap set by Alexander to catch her discussing company business. It could also be a lifeline. Emma changed into jeans and a sweater, tucked the USB drive into her bra, and headed out. The Greenwich Village Coffee House was a small, dimly lit establishment with few security cameras, a detail Emma immediately noticed and appreciated. Michael Thompson sat in a corner booth, his silver hair and tailored suit making him look more like a distinguished professor than a cutthroat investor. "Ms. Carter," he greeted her, standing politely. "Thank you for coming. Please, sit." Emma slid into the booth, keeping her bag close. "How did you get my number, Mr. Thompson? And how did you know about my situation?" Michael smiled grimly. Wall Street talks, especially when a key executive is escorted out of a building weeks before an IPO. He paused as a waitress delivered 2 coffees. "I ordered you decaf. Congratulations. By the way," Emma stiffened. "I don't know what you mean." "Please, Ms. Carter, I've been watching Alexander Reynolds for years. I know his patterns. I know how he operates, and I know that you're carrying his child." Emma's hand instinctively moved to her stomach. "What do you want from me?" Michael leaned forward. "I want what you want, justice. Alexander Reynolds destroyed my first company 15 years ago. He was my business partner, my protege. When our startup gained traction, he leveraged his family connections to push me out, rewrote the company history, and took everything I had built." Emma studied him carefully. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because history repeats itself. Alexander has been systematically eliminating anyone who might threaten his narrative of being a self-made tech genius, including you." Michael slid a business card across the table. "This is Olivia Wright, the best securities fraud attorney in New York. She's expecting your call." Emma didn't touch the card. "I signed an NDA, and I have no proof of any wrongdoing." Michael's eyes narrowed. "Don't you? The USB drive from this morning's board meeting would contain quite a bit of interesting information, I imagine." Emma's blood ran cold. "How could you possibly know about that?" "Because I still have friends at Nevawave. Friends who tell me when Alexander Reynolds panics and orders an immediate audit of all digital assets after firing his executive assistant." Michael's smile was predatory. The man who's never rattled was reportedly shouting at his security team about a missing drive. Emma said nothing, weighing her options carefully. I'm not asking you to violate any agreements, Miss Carter, Michael continued. I'm offering you legal protection and the opportunity to correct an injustice. If Alexander Reynolds has broken the law, securities fraud, insider trading, corporate espionage that nullifies any NDA you've signed. And what do you get out of this? Emma asked bluntly. Satisfaction. Michael's expression hardened. And a significant short position on NevaWave stock that will pay handsomely if the IPO fails? At least he was honest about his motivations. Emma considered her options. On one hand, working with Michael could provide her with resources and protection she desperately needed. On the other hand, she would be placing her trust in yet another powerful man with his own agenda. I need time to think, Emma said finally. Michael nodded, sliding a burner phone across the table. Take all the time you need, but not too much. Alexander is a thorough man. He'll find ways to silence you permanently if he believes you're a threat. Emma's apartment building came into view as her taxi rounded the corner. Something was wrong. A black SUV was parked outside, and two men in suits stood near the entrance. They matched the description of NevaWave's private security team. Keep driving, Emma instructed the driver. Go around the block. As they passed, one of the men looked directly at her through the taxi window. Emma ducked down, heart pounding. Actually, can you take me to this address? She showed the driver Olivia Wright's business card. 40 minutes later, Emma sat in a sleek law office in Lower Manhattan, the USB drive on the desk between her and Olivia Wright, a sharp-featured woman in her 40s with penetrating eyes and an air of absolute competence. Michael briefed me on your situation, Olivia said, studying Emma carefully. Before we proceed, I need to know if you're prepared for what comes next. Alexander Reynolds isn't just a man. He's a corporation with resources, connections, and a vested interest in silencing you. He's already frozen my accounts, threatened to blacklist me, and apparently sent security to my apartment. Emma replied. What's next? Having me arrested? Possibly, Olivia said with unsettling calmness. Corporate espionage carries serious penalties. That's why we need to establish that you're a whistleblower, not a disgruntled ex-employee. I'm not just a whistleblower, Emma said, her voice strengthening. I'm a partner whose contributions were stolen. Those algorithms that made NevaWave's products revolutionary, I wrote them. The marketing strategy for the Eastern European expansion mine. The cost-cutting measures that boosted our profit margins by 23% last quarter. Also mine, Olivia raised an eyebrow. Can you prove any of that? Emma pointed to the USB drive. It's all there. Alexander would assign me research projects, then present my findings as his own to the board. He never suspected I kept original drafts with metadata showing creation dates and authorship. Olivia picked up the drive, turning it thoughtfully in her fingers. This changes things. You're not just exposing corporate wrongdoing. You're reclaiming your intellectual property. She plugged the drive into a secure, air-gapped computer. Let's see what we're working with. For the next hour, they sifted through the contents. Emma pointed out key documents, her original algorithms now bearing Alexander's name. Email exchanges showing Alexander and Senator Pierce conspiring to manipulate regulatory approval processes. The systematic sabotage of Innovate Tech. My brother worked there, Emma explained, voice tight with anger. The company collapsed after security concerns tanked their stock. Jason had a breakdown. Couldn't find work in tech again. He's working as a barista now, living in his car half the time. I never knew Alexander was behind it. Olivia's expression was grim as she examined the evidence. This goes beyond securities fraud. There's RICO potential here, racketeering, conspiracy, wire fraud. She looked up at Emma. With this evidence, we could approach the SEC, but you need to understand what that means. Your life will be turned upside down. Depositions, possibly testimony, media scrutiny. My life is already upside down, Emma replied, hand moving to her stomach. I'm thinking about more than just myself now. Olivia nodded, understanding in her eyes. Then let's talk strategy. First, we need to secure you financially and physically. I have a safe house in Brooklyn where you can stay until we file with the SEC. Michael has agreed to cover your living expenses as part of our arrangement. And what exactly is that arrangement? Michael provides funding and protection. You provide testimony and evidence. I provide legal expertise. In return, Michael makes money on his short position. You reclaim your intellectual property and receive whistleblower compensation, and I get a landmark securities fraud case. Olivia smiled thinly. Everyone wins, except Alexander Reynolds. Emma considered this, then nodded slowly. There's one more thing. I want to start my own company, using my algorithms, the ones Alexander stole, the ones that actually work, not the flawed versions Nevawave is planning to release. Olivia looked surprised. That's ambitious, given your current situation. I didn't spend 5 years helping build someone else's empire just to walk away with nothing, Emma said firmly. Alexander took everything from me. Now I'm going to take everything from him, including his company. A slow smile spread across Olivia's face. Now that's a strategy I can fully support. Let me make a call to Michael. I think we're going to need additional resources. 2 days later, Emma moved into a modest but secure apartment in Brooklyn Heights, provided by Michael's shell company. Her personal belongings had been retrieved by Olivia's team during a coordinated operation, while Nevawave's security detail changed shifts. Emma sat at a new desk, surrounded by legal pads filled with notes and a whiteboard covered in flowcharts. She was designing the foundation of her new company, one built on her actual algorithms, not the compromised versions Alexander planned to take public. Her phone, a new, secure device provided by Michael, buzzed with a news alert. Nevawave Technologies announces IPO date. CEO Alexander Reynolds promises revolutionary new products. Attached was a photo of Alexander and Victoria at a gala, her hand possessively on his arm, both smiling triumphantly at the camera. The caption identified Victoria as Marketing Director and daughter of Senator James Pierce, a key supporter of tech industry deregulation. Emma stared at the image, at Alexander's satisfied smile, at Victoria's smug expression. They thought they had won. They thought Emma Carter had been silenced and forgotten. A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. Olivia entered, followed by Michael and a familiar face that made Emma's heart clench. Jason, she gasped, rising to embrace her brother. He looked thinner than she remembered, his once confident posture now slightly hunched, but his eyes lit up at the sight of her. Emmy, he said, using her childhood nickname. Michael found me at the coffee shop, told me everything. Why didn't you call me? I didn't want to drag you into this mess, Emma admitted. And I didn't know how to tell you that Alexander was behind Innovate Tech's collapse? Jason's expression hardened. Then let's take him down together. Michael cleared his throat. We have news. The SEC has agreed to meet with us tomorrow. They're particularly interested in the communications between Reynolds and Senator Pierce. Emma nodded, determination replacing her earlier melancholy. Good. And I've been working on something else. She turned her laptop to show them a business plan. I'm calling it Phoenix Technologies. Rising from the ashes, Olivia observed with approval. Appropriate. More than that, Emma said, clicking to a presentation slide showing Nevawave's flawed algorithm next to her corrected version. Alexander cut corners on the implementation. The version Nevawave is taking public has critical security vulnerabilities, ones I identified months ago, but Alexander dismissed as acceptable risks. Jason whistled low. That's corporate suicide in today's climate. Exactly, Emma agreed. Which means when Nevawave inevitably faces a massive security breach, the market will need an immediate alternative. Michael studied the business plan with growing interest. You're not just planning to expose Reynolds, you're positioning yourself to replace him. I'm impressed. He looked up at Emma with newfound respect. Initial funding won't be a problem. I can round up $2 million by the end of the week. For the first time since being escorted from Horizon Tower, Emma felt a spark of genuine hope. She wasn't just fighting for justice now. She was building something new, something better. Get some rest, Olivia advised, checking her watch. Tomorrow we meet with the SEC. The day after, Nevawave begins its roadshow for the IPO. And soon after that, she smiled wickedly, Alexander Reynolds learns what it feels like to lose everything. As her team departed, Emma stood by the window, looking toward Manhattan's glittering skyline. Somewhere in that forest of skyscrapers, Alexander and Victoria were celebrating their impending triumph, unaware of the storm gathering around them. Emma placed both hands on her stomach, feeling a flutter of movement for the first time, her child making its presence known. "We're going to be okay," she whispered. "Better than okay. We're going to change the world." The New York Stock Exchange hummed with anticipation. Today marked the culmination of Alexander Reynolds' decade-long journey, the Nevawave IPO, projected to be the largest tech offering of the year. Financial news channels broadcast live from the trading floor. Analysts predicted a first-day pop of at least 30%, and social media buzzed with Harj Nevawave IPO trending nationwide. Inside the historic building, Alexander adjusted his custom Brioni tie, the picture of confident success. Beside him, Victoria Pierce dazzled in a designer dress. Playing her role as the supportive partner to perfection, board members, early investors, and select employees gathered in the ceremonial area. Champagne flutes ready for the moment trading would begin. 5 minutes until the opening bell, Mr. Reynolds, an NYSE official, informed him with deferential respect. Alexander nodded, scanning the room with satisfaction. Everything he had worked for, schemed for, fought for, sacrificed for was about to materialize in the form of a $28 billion valuation. His personal stake would be worth over $8 billion by day's end. He caught Victoria's eye across the room. She raised her champagne flute in a private toast, her ruby lips curving into a smile that promised celebration later. Senator Pierce stood nearby, already fielding congratulations for his visionary support of innovation, a euphemism for the regulatory barriers he had removed for Nevawave through his committee positions. Alexander felt a momentary twinge, an unwelcome intrusion of memory Emma Carter's face as security escorted her from his office. He pushed the thought away. Sentiment was for the weak. Emma had been a calculated risk that had outlived her usefulness. Nothing more. 2 minutes, Mr. Reynolds. We'll need you at the podium. Alexander moved toward the ceremonial bell, Victoria gliding to his side. Cameras focused on them tech's newest power couple, the narrative already established in carefully placed media profiles. The NYSE official handed Alexander the ceremonial gavel. "On behalf of the New York Stock Exchange, we welcome Nevawave Technologies." The official's earpiece crackled. He frowned, listening intently, then paled. "Sir, there seems to be a situation. The SEC has requested a temporary halt to the offering." Alexander's practiced smile froze. What kind of situation? Before the official could respond, a commotion erupted at the entrance to the ceremonial area. A group of people strode purposefully toward the podium, Emma Carter at the center, flanked by Olivia Wright and 3 individuals with SEC credentials displayed prominently. Emma had transformed from the last time Alexander had seen her. Gone was the deferential assistant. In her place stood a woman radiating quiet power, her tailored maternity suit a deliberate statement, her expression one of absolute resolution. The trading floor fell silent as she approached. Victoria's champagne flute froze halfway to her lips. Senator Pierce took an involuntary step backward. "Alexander," Emma greeted him with cold formality. "I believe these gentlemen have something to discuss with you before trading begins." The lead SEC investigator stepped forward. "Mr. Reynolds, I'm James Morrison, head of enforcement for the Securities and Exchange Commission. We're serving you with this cease and desist order preventing the offering of Nevawave securities, pending investigation into allegations of securities fraud, insider trading, and corporate malfeasance." He handed Alexander a document bearing the official SEC seal. Alexander didn't look at it. His eyes locked on Emma's. "What is the meaning of this?" Senator Pierce demanded, pushing forward. "Do you know who I am?" "Senator James Pierce." Another agent confirmed. We have some questions for you as well, regarding communications with Mr. Reynolds about regulatory matters while maintaining undisclosed financial interests in NevaWave subsidiaries. Victoria moved to Alexander's side, her voice a harsh whisper. Fix this. Now. Alexander finally broke his stare down with Emma, turning to the SEC agent with his most disarming smile. There's clearly been a misunderstanding. Perhaps we could discuss this privately, rather than disrupting a historic market event. This isn't a negotiation, Mr. Reynolds, Morrison replied. The IPO is suspended pending our investigation. We have a warrant to secure all NevaWave financial records and communications. He gestured, and additional agents entered, moving toward NevaWave's temporary offices within the exchange. Alexander's carefully constructed facade began to crack. This is absurd. These allegations are completely unfounded. Are they? Emma interrupted, her voice carrying across the now silent trading floor. The SEC has evidence of systematic securities fraud, including falsified financial projections, undisclosed material risks in your core technology, and illegal market manipulation. Alexander's face darkened. You signed an NDA. Emma, whatever you think you know, NDAs don't cover criminal activity. Alexander, Olivia Wright interjected smoothly. As your legal team should have advised you. News cameras swiveled to capture the confrontation. Financial reporters, sensing blood in the water, began broadcasting live updates. On the massive screens above the trading floor, NevaWave's prepared celebration videos were replaced by breaking news banners. SEC halts NevaWave IPO amid fraud allegations. Victoria stepped forward, her composure slipping. This is nothing but the vindictive attack of a disgruntled ex-employee. Ms. Carter was terminated for cause after attempting to leverage her pregnancy for financial gain. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Emma smiled thinly. Is that the story you're going with, Victoria, because I have evidence suggesting otherwise? She turned to face the assembled investors and media. For 5 years, I served as executive assistant to Alexander Reynolds. During that time, I developed key algorithms and business strategies that became the foundation of NevaWave's success. Emma gestured to a large screen where Michael Thompson now stood with a remote control. With the SEC's permission, I'd like to share some relevant communications. The screen flickered to life, displaying an email from Alexander to Victoria. Emma's pregnant, claims it's mine. Convenient timing with the IPO approaching and her options about to vest. I'll handle it tomorrow. Can't have her claiming credit or compensation for her work now. The board believes everything was my innovation anyway. Victoria's reply appeared below. Get rid of her immediately. Daddy says the IPO needs to happen before the committee investigations begin. We can't afford any complications or delays. Use the NDA to keep her quiet. Gasps and murmurs filled the trading floor. Alexander lunged toward Emma, only to be restrained by SEC agents. That's private correspondence, he snarled. Obtained illegally. Actually, Emma replied calmly, it was obtained through legal whistleblower channels, along with evidence that you systematically stole my work, backdated patents, and knowingly misrepresented the security capabilities of your core technology to investors. The screen changed to display side-by-side code, Emma's original algorithms with her digital signature and timestamps. Next to Alexander's versions with critical security components removed. The technology NevaWave planned to take public today contains critical vulnerabilities that Mr. Reynolds was fully aware of but concealed from investors and customers. Emma continued, addressing the stunned crowd directly. These vulnerabilities would have exposed user data to unprecedented security risks, a material fact deliberately omitted from the IPO filing. Alexander's face contorted with rage. You treacherous bitch, after everything I gave you. Gave me, Emma's voice cut like steel. You gave me nothing. You took everything, my work, my reputation, my future. You threatened to destroy my career. You denied your own child. She placed a protective hand over her visible pregnancy. But you made one critical mistake. Alexander, you underestimated me. The trading floor erupted in chaos. Investors demanded answers. Reporters shouted questions. Never-Wave board members huddled in panicked consultation. Through it all, Emma stood unwavering. Michael Thompson and Olivia Wright flanking her like generals on a battlefield. The SEC agent approached Alexander again. "Mr. Reynolds, we'll need you to come with us for questioning. Your attorneys can meet us at our offices." As Alexander was led away, his empire crumbling around him, he locked eyes with Emma one final time. The look of pure hatred he gave her would have once devastated her. Now she met it with calm certainty. Victoria attempted to follow Alexander, but was intercepted by another agent. "Ms. Pierce, we have questions for you as well regarding your role in potential securities violations and your father's undisclosed conflicts of interest." Senator Pierce was already on his phone, undoubtedly calling in political favors. But the damage was done. Live cameras had captured everything. The carefully constructed narrative of Never-Wave's visionary leadership had been shattered beyond repair. As the agents departed with Alexander and Victoria, an eerie quiet settled over the trading floor. Emma found herself surrounded by Never-Wave board members, their expressions a mixture of shock, anger, and calculation. "What happens now?" asked Walter Chen, the lead independent director, voicing the question on everyone's mind. Emma exchanged glances with Michael and Olivia before responding. "Now, the board has a choice. Never-Wave's technology is fundamentally sound when implemented correctly. The company has talented employees who deserve better leadership. You can fight a prolonged legal battle that will destroy shareholder value, or you can move forward under new management." "New management?" Chen repeated skeptically. "I assume you have suggestions?" Michael Thompson stepped forward. "The board could appoint an interim CEO, someone intimately familiar with the company's technology and operations, someone who can correct the security vulnerabilities before they become public knowledge, someone who can restore investor confidence." The implication hung in the air. Board members exchanged glances, performing rapid mental calculations of liability, reputation, and survival. Chen studied Emma thoughtfully. "You want Reynolds's position?" "I want the position I earned," Emma corrected him. "I built Never-Wave's core technology. I can fix what Alexander broke, but I have conditions." "Of course you do," another board member muttered. "Complete leadership restructuring, full recognition of my intellectual contributions, equity compensation commensurate with my role as founder and chief architect." Emma's voice was firm. "And a new company named Phoenix Technologies." "Phoenix?" Chen raised an eyebrow. "Rising from the ashes. Appropriate, if somewhat on the nose." "The alternative," Olivia interjected smoothly, "is that Ms. Carter launches her own competing company with correctly implemented versions of her algorithms, while Never-Wave faces years of SEC investigations, shareholder lawsuits, and criminal proceedings. Your choice." The board members withdrew to a private room for an emergency session. Emma, Michael, and Olivia waited in the now empty ceremonial area, watching through the glass as CNBC and Bloomberg ran continuous coverage of the IPO implosion. "You were magnificent," Michael told Emma, genuine admiration in his voice. "In 30 years on Wall Street, I've never seen anything like it." Emma watched the financial headlines scrolling across the screens. Never-Wave IPO halted amid fraud allegations. Tech unicorn in turmoil as CEO faces SEC probe. Whistleblower claims theft of intellectual property. "It's not over yet," she cautioned. "Alexander has powerful friends. The board could still decide to fight." "They won't," Olivia said confidently, checking her phone. "My sources say they're already discussing severance packages for Alexander's executive team. No one wants to go down with the ship." After 45 minutes, the board members returned. Walter Chen approached Emma with the resigned expression of someone who had recognized the inevitable. "The board has voted to accept your terms, with modifications," he announced. "We'll appoint you as interim CEO while we navigate the SEC investigation. The company name change and recognition of your contributions are approved. Equity compensation will require shareholder approval. but the board will recommend a 25% stake. Emma considered this. And the leadership restructuring. Victoria Pierce has been terminated, effective immediately. Senior executives will be evaluated on a case-by-case basis. Chen extended his hand. Do we have an agreement, Ms. Carter? Emma glanced at Olivia, who gave a slight nod of approval. We have an agreement, Mr. Chen. Emma shook his hand firmly. I'll expect formal documentation by end of day. As the board members dispersed to manage the crisis, Emma found herself alone at the podium where Alexander had expected to celebrate his triumph. The NYSE official approached cautiously. Ms. Carter, what should we tell the press? Emma looked out at the trading floor, at the cameras still broadcasting the extraordinary events of the morning. Tell them Phoenix Technologies looks forward to building an ethical tech company that values innovation, integrity, and its people. Tell them we'll reschedule our public offering once we've addressed the issues created by previous management. She paused, then added with quiet conviction, and tell them this is what accountability looks like. The official nodded and withdrew. Emma placed both hands on her stomach, feeling her child move as if in response to the momentous events unfolding around them. Michael approached with a satellite phone. It's Jason. He's been monitoring everything from the safe house. Wants to congratulate his sister, the CEO. Emma took the phone, a smile breaking through her professional composure. Jason, we did it. We actually did it. As she spoke with her brother, Emma watched Victoria Pierce being escorted from the building by SEC agents. The former marketing director's perfect composure finally shattered. Their eyes met briefly across the trading floor. Victoria's expression of pure hatred was matched only by the triumph in Emma's gaze. By evening, Emma stood in what had been Alexander's office at Horizon Tower, the Manhattan skyline glittering beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows. The desk had been cleared of his personal items. Security had already changed the access codes and updated the executive roster in the lobby. The speed of corporate adaptation to new power never ceased to amaze her. This morning, Alexander Reynolds had been a visionary CEO on the verge of tech immortality. Now, employees hurried past his former office with averted eyes, as if his disgrace might be contagious. Olivia entered with a stack of documents. The board approved everything. The name change to Phoenix Technologies is already being processed. Your appointment as CEO is official. She placed the papers on the desk, Alexander's desk. Now Emma's. Congratulations. Emma ran her hand along the smooth black granite surface where Alexander had sat when he fired her just weeks ago. The symmetry wasn't lost on her. What about Alexander and Victoria or Senator Pierce? Alexander was released after questioning, but is prohibited from leaving the state. Victoria is cooperating with authorities. Apparently, she's willing to testify against both her father and Alexander to save herself. The senator is claiming ignorance, but his communications tell a different story. Olivia smiled thinly. They're destroying each other already. A knock at the door interrupted them. Jason entered, carrying a small potted plant, the same succulent that had sat on Emma's assistant desk for years. Thought your new office could use this, he said, placing it on the windowsill. First decoration for Phoenix Technologies. Emma smiled, emotion tightening her throat. Thank you, Jason, for everything. The tech team is waiting downstairs, Jason informed her. Now all business. I've identified the critical security vulnerabilities in the current implementation. We can have patches ready within 48 hours. Emma nodded, already shifting into CEO mode. Schedule a company-wide meeting for tomorrow morning. Everyone needs to understand what's happening and where we're going from here. She turned to Olivia. And I want a press conference the day after. It's time to introduce Phoenix Technologies to the world. As Jason and Olivia departed to execute her instructions, Emma remained alone in the expansive office. She walked to the windows, looking out at the city where she had arrived as an ambitious Harvard graduate 5 years earlier. She had come seeking opportunity and found betrayal. She had built someone else's dream and watched him try to destroy her. She had lost everything, only to reclaim more than she had ever imagined possible. Emma placed her hand on her stomach, feeling the child that had catalyzed this extraordinary journey. "Welcome to Phoenix Technologies," she whispered. "Our company." 1 year later, the headline of Forbes magazine said it all. Phoenix Rising: How Emma Carter Transformed Tech's Biggest Scandal into Its Greatest Success Story. Emma's photo graced the cover, standing confidently in the atrium of the renamed Phoenix Tower, her 6-month-old daughter Harper cradled in one arm, the other hand pointing toward a massive digital display of the company's soaring stock price. The article inside chronicled what industry insiders were already calling the most remarkable corporate transformation in modern business history. Under Emma's leadership, Phoenix Technologies had not merely survived the scandal that derailed its initial public offering, it had thrived. The company's eventual IPO, 8 months after Emma assumed control, had been oversubscribed by 300%. The stock had risen 280% since then, making it the best-performing tech offering of the year. Emma's 27% stake negotiated as part of her settlement with the board was now worth $4.2 billion, placing her among the wealthiest self-made women in America. But the numbers told only part of the story. Emma gazed out from her office windows at the Manhattan skyline, the same view that had once been Alexander Reynolds' daily backdrop. The office itself, however, was utterly transformed. Gone was the cold, minimalist aesthetic that had reflected Alexander's personality. In its place was a warm, inviting space with sustainable materials, living plants, and family photos. Most notably, a portion of the massive office had been converted into a state-of-the-art nursery where Harper could stay while Emma worked. The arrangement had inspired a company-wide policy providing similar accommodations for all employees with young children, just one of many changes that had earned Phoenix Technologies recognition as one of the best places to work in the tech industry. A gentle knock interrupted Emma's reflection. Jason entered, now officially the company's chief technology officer, carrying a tablet with the latest product development metrics. "The security implementation is testing at 99.8% effectiveness," he reported proudly. "That's 43% better than our closest competitor and light years ahead of where NevaWave's technology was heading under Reynolds." Emma smiled, taking the tablet to review the details. "And the accessibility features for the new platform, exceeding benchmarks. The team you put together from former Innovate Tech employees is doing incredible work." Jason's expression softened. "They're grateful for the second chance. We all are." Emma squeezed her brother's arm affectionately. "We built this together. Jason. All of us." "Ms. Carter," her assistant's voice came through the intercom. "Your 2 o'clock is here. And Ms. Wright called to confirm dinner tonight to discuss the final settlements." "Thank you, David. Send them in." Jason gathered his materials. "That's my cue to leave. Harper and I will see you at the playground later." This had become their ritual, Emma, Jason, and Harper meeting at the small park near the office before heading home, a deliberate effort to maintain work-life balance. "Wouldn't miss it," Emma confirmed as Jason departed, passing Michael Thompson in the doorway. The venture capitalist entered, looking more relaxed than Emma had ever seen him. His short position on NevaWave had paid handsomely, and his early investment in Phoenix Technologies had multiplied many times over. "The Phoenix and the Phoenix Maker," he greeted Emma with a warm smile, approaching the nursery corner where Harper played contentedly with educational toys. "She gets more beautiful every time I see her. And more determined," Emma added with pride. "The pediatrician says she's advanced for her age, already trying to stand." Michael nodded approvingly. "Like mother, like daughter." He turned, his expression becoming more serious. "I've just come from the courthouse. Thought you should hear it from me first." Emma tensed slightly. The sentencing. 5 years for securities fraud and insider trading. With good behavior, he'll likely serve 3. Michael watched Emma carefully for her reaction. "The judge was particularly harsh about the systematic theft of your intellectual property. Called it a betrayal of the innovation economy." Emma absorbed this news silently. Alexander Reynolds, once celebrated as a tech visionary, would now be remembered as a fraud who built his empire on stolen ideas and broken laws. And Victoria, she asked, 18 months, mostly probation, in exchange for her testimony against Alexander and her father. The senator resigned last month as part of a plea deal. Michael sat in one of the comfortable visitor chairs. It's over. Emma, they've paid for what they did to you. Had they, Emma wondered. Alexander would serve his time in a minimum security facility, then emerge to whatever wealth his lawyers had managed to shield from the judgments against him. Victoria would rebuild her life, protected by family connections and inherited privilege. They had lost status and freedom temporarily, but not everything. Not the way Emma had almost lost everything. I saw him, you know, Michael continued. Alexander, at the sentencing, he asked about you and Harper. Emma's gaze sharpened. What did he want? To see his daughter. I think he mentioned something about rights. A flash of the old anger surged through Emma. After denying she was his, after threatening me when I told him I was pregnant, he has no rights. Michael nodded, understanding her reaction. I told him as much, but you should know he seemed different. Broken. Watching everything he built being transformed into something better under your leadership. It destroyed something in him. Emma felt no satisfaction at this news, only a weary resignation. I didn't do this for revenge, Michael. Not ultimately. I did it because what he built was fundamentally flawed, technically and ethically. Phoenix needed to exist, with or without Alexander's downfall. I know, Michael smiled, genuine admiration in his eyes. That's why you succeeded where he failed. He built for his ego. You built for the future. He glanced at his watch. Speaking of which, I should go. My wife is expecting me at our daughter's piano recital. Some things are more important than business. Another change, Emma noted. The once ruthless venture capitalists now prioritize family over finance, one of many positive ripple effects from the Phoenix transformation. After Michael departed, Emma sat at her desk, reviewing the quarterly projections before her upcoming board meeting. The numbers were exceptional revenue growth, 38% above target. Customer acquisition cost 27% below industry average. Employee retention at record highs. But the metric that gave Emma the most satisfaction wasn't on any financial statement. It was the success of the Phoenix Foundation, the nonprofit she had established with 2% of her equity, dedicated to supporting women in technology and victims of workplace discrimination. The foundation had already provided scholarships to over 200 female computer science students and legal assistance to dozens of employees facing situations similar to what Emma had endured. It was, in many ways, the achievement she was most proud of. Emma's phone chimed with a calendar alert, time to meet Jason and Harper at the playground. She gathered her daughter from the nursery area, delighting in Harper's happy gurgle of recognition. Ready to go see Uncle Jason? She asked, securing Harper in her carrier. As they moved through the executive floor toward the elevator, employees smiled and waved at the now familiar sight of their CEO with her daughter. Emma had made visibility a priority, showing her team that parenthood and leadership could coexist, that vulnerability and strength weren't mutually exclusive. In the elevator, Emma caught her reflection in the polished doors. The woman who gazed back bore little resemblance to the assistant who had once stood in the same spot, balancing Alexander Reynolds' protein bars and coffee. This Emma Carter stood taller, her expression confident, her eyes clear and purposeful. The elevator doors opened onto the Phoenix Technologies lobby, where the company's new logo, a stylized phoenix in flight, dominated the reception area. Beneath it, the company's mission statement was displayed in elegant lettering: innovation with integrity, technology with purpose, progress with humanity. Words Emma had written herself, reflecting the values Alexander Reynolds had never understood. Outside, the spring air was crisp and invigorating. Emma adjusted Harper's little hat against the breeze as they walked the 2 blocks to the small park where Jason waited. There's my favorite girls, Jason called, waving from a bench near the playground. He looked healthy and confident, a far cry from the broken man Emma had reconnected with after Innovate Tech's destruction. Emma handed Harper to her uncle, who immediately launched into an animated game that had the baby giggling uncontrollably. Watching them, Emma felt a profound sense of peace wash over her. Her phone buzzed with a text from Olivia. Final settlement approved. Alexander relinquishes all claims to paternity and visitation in exchange for reduced financial penalties. You and Harper are officially free of him forever. Celebration dinner still on for tonight. Emma typed a quick confirmation, then put her phone away, returning her attention to Jason and Harper. The legal battle was finally, truly over. The future belonged to them now, unburdened by the past, unlimited in its potential. Ms. Carter. Emma turned to find a young woman standing nearby, clutching a laptop emblazoned with coding stickers. I'm sorry to interrupt your personal time, the woman said nervously. I'm Zoe Kim. I'm in the Phoenix Foundation Scholarship Program, studying computer science at NYU. Emma smiled warmly. No apology needed. Zoe, how is the program working for you? It changed my life, Zoe answered with quiet intensity. I was ready to drop out before the scholarship, couldn't afford tuition, and was dealing with difficult situations in my department. Emma nodded, understanding. I'm glad we could help. It's more than the money, Zoe continued. It's knowing that someone like you exists in this industry, that you fought back and won, that you're creating a different kind of tech company. She hesitated, then asked, do you have any advice for someone just starting out? Emma considered the question carefully, looking from Zoe to Harper to the Phoenix Tower visible in the distance. Never let anyone convince you that your ideas, your work, or your potential belong to them, she said finally. And remember that true success isn't measured by what you build, but by who you bring with you when you succeed. Zoe nodded, visibly moved by the advice. Thank you for everything you're doing. After the young woman departed, Emma joined Jason and Harper on the playground bench. The spring sun warmed her face as she watched children play, parents chat, and life unfold in its ordinary, miraculous way. 1 year ago, she had stood in the rain outside Horizon Tower, everything taken from her, with nothing but a USB drive and her own determination. Today, she sat as a billionaire CEO with her daughter, her brother, and a company built on her true vision. Penny for your thoughts, Jason asked, bouncing Harper gently on his knee. Emma smiled, the peace in her expression reflecting the journey completed and the path ahead. I was just thinking about phoenixes, she replied, how they need the fire to become what they're truly meant to be. Jason nodded, understanding. Well, you certainly rose from the ashes. We all did, Emma corrected him, taking Harper into her arms. The baby reached up to touch her mother's face with perfect trust and love. Emma held her daughter close, looking toward the tower that now bore her company's name, not as a monument to ego or ambition, but as a beacon of what was possible when integrity prevailed over greed, collaboration over exploitation, and courage over fear. Phoenix Technologies wasn't just a company. It was a promise to the future, Harper's future, that the world could be rebuilt better than it was before. And Emma Carter, once dismissed and discarded, had become the architect of that new beginning.